Yo, what's up? We're live, episode 18 of Press Pause with me, Vic Villain. We've got a lot of news this week. A lot of stuff popped off. If you've been following gaming news, which you probably do if you clicked on this video, the big story is obviously the fact that the FTC failed to get the preliminary injunction they were seeking in their attempt to stop Microsoft from purchasing Activision Blizzard King. We're in the end game. It's almost over. It's not over yet, though. There's still a few hurdles they need to clear. There's a few attempts the FTC can make to stop the merger. And beyond that, they'll likely push to sue even after the acquisition. But we'll get deeper into that momentarily. I want to cover some of the smaller news before we, jump into the kind of a topic as meaty as that. So first thing I want to pop off on is, as you can see, I've got here Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals. Now, this is an indie game from Night School Studio. It's been pretty well received. 76% critics recommend on OpenCritic. It's got a strong rating. But what I think is very interesting about it is this is a multi-platform release from Netflix. Now, the first one obviously was not from Netflix, but here we go now with Netflix putting out not just games from their studios on mobile or inside the Netflix app, but on PC, Switch, PlayStation. It's notably absent from Xbox, but it is everywhere else. And I think, this is a sign of the times as some of these other companies are moving into games publishing. Netflix, Amazon, obviously working on Blue Protocol with Bandai Namco, and then Tomb Raider as well. They're publishing Tomb Raider. I think more and more we're going to see that. You've got Netflix has several studios under its belt, including a studio working on a AAA multi-platform game under Joseph Staten, formerly of Xbox and Bungie. So a lot of interesting moves there. All right, now let's go through some pretty rapid fire news here. Nothing too deep. But I want to kick it off with, actually, let's talk here. Assassin's Creed's Feudal Japan Adventure seemingly coming out in 2024. I think this is pretty cool. This is something that would probably get me into Assassin's Creed again. I sat Valhalla out, even though I really like that. I find that time period interesting. I'd just been watching like the Last Kingdom show, like when Valhalla came out. And maybe it was Overload, or maybe, I don't know. But after Odyssey, I don't know. It kind of pulled me out. But if something in Japan, I do think that could be pretty cool. So I'm excited to see where they go with this. It's codenamed Red, likely coming out in 2024. I feel like Assassin's Creed in Japan is something that people have been begging for a long time. So hopefully this is coming sooner rather than later. Speaking of franchises continuing, PlayStation's Horizon franchise will continue for a very long while. They're going off on this. Hang on, let me find the number. The only reason I included this, because I'm not, you guys know, not massive on Horizon, but where is this? This blew my mind. I want to get the number right, and I can't find it. Okay, I think they said they have it might not even have been in this article. I might have read it somewhere else. Oh, bummer. All right. Let's hope this isn't hearsay, but I'm telling you guys. 16. Here it is. I found it. Guys, have a little faith in your boy. Come on. Where? You see that? Guerrilla has 16 plans for future developments. They're going to make 16? I keep looking at the monitor instead of the camera because that's where the camera used to be. Now it's here. Guys, they're going to make 16 Horizon games. I admittedly, I fell off after the first one and I couldn't get into the story, but how do you have plans for 16 future developments? I don't know, but they do mention they're working on the multiplayer. It's going to be a big shift, building this all out to a multiplayer experience. Which is interesting that they're saying it's such a big shift because, you know, previously they'd worked on multiplayer shooters. However, that was some time ago, and likely the developers they have on staff, that's kind of shifted and changed. So does make sense that it would be challenging to go backwards in that regard. Not backwards as far as like the plan, but, you know, going back to what they'd previously done. I think that's interesting. Obviously, PlayStation is extremely focused on live service and multiplayer right now. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I just think 16 blows my mind. Like, how are they going to make 16 Horizon games? Give it a rest. This might be interesting to you. Test Drive Unlimited, Solar Crown. It's been delayed. We'd already heard that it had been delayed to 2024. But there is going to be a 3-day closed beta test near the end of the month, July 24th. So if you're interested in it, if you like racing games, might be worth checking it out. It is going to be available on all platforms that it's releasing on, right? So Steam and Epic on PC, Xbox Series, and PlayStation 5. So it might be something worth picking up. I want to try and give it a shot. I feel like I'm almost finished up with Final Fantasy 16. Definitely by the 24th. So I'll have a little free time, but I'm thinking, like, what am I going to jump into next? August is going to be crazy busy. You got like Immortals of Avium, you got Sea of Stars, Armored Core, which I'm not sure if I'm going to play or not. But then September, Starfield, baby. And then you go right into the fall is going to be crazy, y'all. I can't even wrap my head around it. Like Starfield, Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake, Sea of Stars, Immortals of Avium, a new Call of Duty. Just so much is coming out. Oh, man, it's going to be wild. All right, let me circle back. Speaking of games that are coming out soon, this is coming out for PC into this month. I mean, yeah, coming out to PC into this month. It will be launching on PlayStation end of August, and that is Baldur's Gate 3. Now, these ads ruin I need to get an ad blocker or something. Jeez Louise. Baldur's Gate 3 shoots up Steam top sellers list after bear sex reveal. You might have seen the thumbnail of this video. Don't romance the bear. Stop it, y'all. I'm not going to show you this video because I heard TikTok and some other places were pulling down the video because it's questionable. I just saw this on my Twitter feed, the video, somebody posted it from Larian. Had they did a showcase called Out of Hell or Into Hell, something, the Panel from Hell live stream. And they let the audience kind of choose their own adventure through Baldur's Gate 3. And of course, you get a mob of gamers together. They somehow ended up having a vampire have sex with a druid in bear form. Yeah, I said that correctly. That's what happened. Seriously, y'all? Seriously? What? I don't mind romance in games. I think it's a great part of the stories, but it's just a weird thing to showcase, I think. I don't know. It's kind of funny, but it's also like, yeah, if you want to have sex with this bear, you can. You just want to sex with a... Why? Honestly, why? It's just so fucking ridiculous. But I guess that's D&D, right? It's Baldur's Gate. I'm going to show you a little... That's the vampire elf thing or whatever. I can't even... I just don't want to get it pulled down. But you can find it. Yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, it had risen 21 places to become the 4th top-selling game on Steam. Now, I do think the article here is just, putting 2 and 2 together. Baldur's Gate 3 is obviously a huge title that's going to take off. However, this bear sex scene is going to get memed to death and really has pushed it beyond just like core gamers into mainstream. Like the bear romance was trending. All right, so that's fucked up, man. And I've seen a lot of people defending it like, hey, it's an optional thing you can do if you want in a 100-hour game. And it's like, okay. Like, okay, it's optional. But somebody had to like sit and put that option in. I'll just tell you this without showing you the whole video. There are ball jiggle physics. There are ball jiggle physics at work here. Somebody had to design like the jiggle physics of vampire balls. They cut the scene and say not safe for stream, so I don't know how much you actually get to see. But they built right up to it. And they were showing bare ass, so I don't know what they were hiding. You know, they showed bare ass on stream, but they didn't want to show whatever that bear did to that vampire. Part of me wants to show it to you just because I didn't know what was going on when I clicked. But I'm not gonna do that. Let's move on. Genshin Impact actors say they're struggling to pay rent, as payment is withheld from them for at least 4 months. 2 different voice actors talking about not being paid for between 4 to 6 months. This is insane. This is one of the most lucrative games out there right now. I think it's $86 million a month. Is how much money this game's making. They're not paying people. I think, you know, look, in this article, you see them calling for a union contract. And I think part of that is like, this is why you're seeing people push for unionization in the gaming space. Is just these practices are ridiculous. This game is a multi-billion-dollar revenue generator, and they can't pay their voice actors on time. I mean, months. That's unacceptable. That's wild, man. And you know, for this industry to stay healthy, things like this do need to get attention. This does need to be brought up, that a lot of these jobs aren't union jobs. They're underpaid. They're not great. Whether it's the voice actors, the art, the devs, whatever. A lot of times they're underserved and they're underpaid. So when companies do shit like this is why you see calls for unionization increasing. And you gotta say, it seems warranted. You know, I just read in an article. I'm just reading an article and spouting off here, but this is a wild, I don't know, man. You read something like this and it brings you down because you're like, how is this company they're just not paying? Like, you'd think your voice, like, I don't know, man. Just imagine you just didn't get paid for work. Like, how are you just allowed to not pay me? All right, moving on. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart's coming to PC. No SSD required, even though they said the SSD was what allowed them to do this game. So whatever. It's got GPU decompression. I'm not going to pretend I know. I'm smart about computers. I can add more RAM. I don't know what half the shit means. But Nixxes is doing the port for Insomniac, and Nixxes has been pretty solid on ports. PlayStation seems to struggle a bit when Nixxes is not involved with the port. Like, they didn't work on the port for The Last of Us. Part 1 is my understanding, and that was a mess. But like the God of War port they did was incredible. So hopefully this will be solid. I think this was a really fun game. I personally think Psychonauts 2, which was, what, a year after? Or within the same year of release, was the better platformer to come out, in my opinion, as far as like gameplay and overall enjoyment. And that's already on PC. But Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is fun. It was a great graphical showcase for what the PS5 could do. Interested to see how people take to it on PC. But yeah, it's worth picking up. I would honestly say, though, my opinion, it's worth picking up on a sale. Unless you're like a diehard platformer. If you've been like jonesing for it, you don't even need me to tell you. But if you're on the fence, Ratchet and Clank's a good game on sale. All right. Let's get in some more. I don't want to subscribe. Let me read the article. I go through this. I'm not, listen, this doesn't, I go through and I get rid of all the ads. I prime everything. They come crawling back in like lice. Just, it's like trying to keep a ship clean of rats, but we've been in a dirty port too long. Naughty Dog co-president Evan Wells to retire from studio. I had to go to GameDeveloper.com to find an article that didn't have a ridiculous headline, because all the gaming rags are saying Naughty Dog co-president quits. Sudden change at Naughty Dog. Huge pivotal, new direction. Like, he's quit. He's left the studio. He's retiring. The dude has been there. He's been there since 1998. Okay? He's been there since they were doing like Jax and Daxter. And he's leaving now. He's done. He's retired. All right? So, here he is with Neil Druckmann, writer, director, The Last of Us, and Uncharted 4. But look, he just said, content with my time at the studio and all that we've accomplished together over the last 25 years. Working here has been awe-inspiring, and I have nothing but gratitude for everything that I've been able to learn and be a part of. He began his tenure at Sega. Oh, he did Toe Jam and Earl? Dude, he did Toe Jam and Earl. I had no idea. He'd been at Crystal Dynamics, then Naughty Dog. So, Crash Bandicoot 3, blah, 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 some other things. But he became co-president in 2005, just ahead of Uncharted Drake's Fortune's release. So really, he saw through some big stuff. So Neil Druckmann will now serve as the studio's creative head, as the studio's creative head, and then Alison Mori will be promoted as studio head and oversee like the operations and finances. Also joining the leadership team are Eric Pangilinan and Jeremy Yates as co-heads of art, and Anthony Newman as the production head. So wish him well. He's obviously had a great career, been a part of some amazing games at Naughty Dog and the PlayStation family. But just wanted to, show up. I had to go to GameDeveloper.com because a lot of these articles it's clickbait bullshit, right? They just want you to freak out like Naughty Dog's in some kind of trouble, which I get. They're on the Warpath forum now ever since we found out that Factions is in some degree of trouble. All right. COD Warzone's new The Boys superpowers are great, but I'm gonna play a little section of this. Mute that. Okay. Y'all ready for this? They added this to Call of Duty, yo. People from The Boys, right? And it's not just that they added the skins, because that's kind of hilarious. They've added the superpowers, man. They're going to be pickups on the map. So there's Temp V, which is the serum that gives the superpowers, them powers in The Boys. But look at this. You pick them up at random. Are you kidding me? Laser beam eyes? Electric shockwaves? This is sick. Now, I looked into this. They're temporary. So you'll be able to use it for a little bit, and then it'll run out. You'll have to find more V. I think it's going to be a common item on the map. So it'll probably be something that you'll have to engage with. But laser eyes, super jump, all that kind of stuff. Looks wild. Looks really cool. I'm excited. I'm going to try to get in there either tonight or this weekend. But that's an awesome little crossover there. One thing though, I've heard it's in like almost all the maps. I would have liked them to keep a little bit of purity on something, so there'd be some room for some super, or make it its own playlist. It'll be fun, but for people who, compete and take it serious, it might be a little bit frustrating to have to use this for however long it's gonna last. Not sure how long they're running this event for. All right. Also, wanted to touch base on some weapon buffs and nerfs in Warzone 2. And Modern Warfare 2. So here's what got nerfed. The ISO 45, they've reduced close range damage. They've reduced headshot damage in the multiplayer only. And they've increased hip spread. The Vaznev 9K got a nerf. Kastov 762, Kastov 74U, the TAC 56. KV Broadside got increased mid-range damage. So the Broadside is getting more powerful. They reduced the Bryson 800, the Bryson 890, the Expedite 12. They've nerfed the Tempest Torrent. They've nerfed the EBR 14, the Lockwood MK2, the SAB 60. Okay, I feel like none of these were the. I mean, I guess the TAC 56 and the Broadside you see quite a bit of, but I wasn't. The EBR 14 was a ground pickup, but I was never picking that up off a player. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting sometimes what they focus on cleaning up. The Vazdiv 9K, I do see why they would reduce close mid damage distance, because that thing was a beast. But I don't know. I feel like when I saw this list, there's gonna be more like meta guns. Like I was gonna think like, okay, they're gonna do something to like the TAC V or like the 5.56 or an M4 or the Lachman sub. But no. Okay. All right, here's this. Researchers find 87% of US classic video games are out of print and critically endangered. Now, the way they did this was talking about games from 2010 or before that are not available on modern devices. So not still in print, right? And so they included re-releases and remasters as available, but remakes don't count. So only 13% are available to play. Games from 2010 and before, so classic games, right? The interesting thing about this is one of the reasons they're bringing this to light is one of the groups behind this study. So they did this survey of the video game reissue market in the U.S. It was written by Phil Salvador, library director of the Video Game History Foundation. Did it with a team of students from the University of Washington. Now, here's why this is interesting. What they're asking for and kind of what the argument is that they would like libraries and nonprofits like the Video Game History Foundation to be able to share and distribute classic games to people in much the same way that libraries are able to share and distribute books, movies, and music out to people, right? So if I don't know if any of you go to the local library or use it online, but like my fiance uses our local library app to grab audiobooks, movies, whatever, just digitally onto her phone or onto her laptop, because there's all sorts of stuff that's available, and they only have so many licenses at a time, so you'll get access to it for, you can rent this, you can rent this audiobook for like a week or week and a half or whatever, and there's a queue, there's people in line who are up next, so you have to, at the end of your time period, you lose the rental. You can't access it, right? But it allows you access to these sort of things. They're not allowed to do that with video games. So they have some classic video games at libraries, but they can't offer them digitally. So you have to come into the library and physically be there, right? You can't leave the library with it. So it's very restricted, and that's because the Entertainment Software Association fights and lobbies against allowing libraries to treat video games the way classic film, movies, books are treated. They basically argue that they've done a good enough job making sure classic titles are available to consumers. But when 87% are not available to consumers, I don't know by what definition that is a good job. Because look, they surveyed 4,000 titles. All right. This really stuck out to me. Listen to this. Let me see if I can bring this a little. Okay. Can we get... Okay. For comparison, that is slightly above the availability of pre-World War II audio recordings, Salazar writes, and slightly below the survival rate of American silent films. We're talking about games from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and they're in just as bad shape as music and movies from back when Calvin Coolidge was president. That's not Coolidge. I'll show myself out. Look, that's wild. That's a terrible job at preservation. This is why, you have piracy and emulation. It's because they don't provide them. But they don't want to provide them. They want you to buy the new thing, because they're gonna have to sell these classic games cheap. These classic games don't have in-game monetization. They're gonna have to sell it to you cheap. You might get stuck on it for a while. You're not gonna spend any more money. You're not gonna buy skins. There's no skins in these old games. So they don't really want to make these available. They like controlling the flow of games, and you buy the new thing, and all of that, because it's frustrating. It's really, I'm going on the 22nd. I'm going to Classic Game Fest. It's a big convention in Austin, Texas. I'm going over there to check out, look for games, try to pick some retro titles up. I like to grab Super Nintendo cartridges. And it's a bummer how difficult it is to find these things, and that you got to wait for these like conventions and stuff and drive out to wherever they are. Because it's hard to find these games. I'd love it if more of them were just available digitally, because I'm not someone who needs physical. I don't mind digital at all. But as far as like, if it's available to me digitally, I'll grab it. But the bummer is when so many old games that were physical just aren't, like, there's no way to get them. It sucks, because you also have to get the old hardware, right? It keeps me from playing a lot of older games. Like, I was a kid in the 90s and early 2000s. I didn't have every system. I generally would have one, maybe two systems, because I had a brother. So sometimes like we would get, like, I got the 360, he got the PS3, so we had both systems in the house. But like, we didn't get every system. Like, we never had a GameCube, right? Because you kind of had to make choices, right? And we went with the original Xbox, and we had a PS2 in the house. So even though we'd had like an NES, we had Game Boys, and we had the N64, we kind of missed out on that whole GameCube era. And it's very hard to find these classic GameCube games. You could maybe find an old GameCube pretty cheap, but Wind Waker is like $80 every time I go to a convention. It's like, dude, come on, man. So I don't know. I really hate to see this, and I hope this gets more attention and people start really preservation matters, and access for the current generation and for the generation coming up behind us. You don't want to lose that history, right? Imagine if the only way to watch like Raging Bull or like the classic, new Hollywood movies from like the 70s, if the only way to watch those was like, you have to go find, a VHS and a VCR and a TV that'll accept it, right? Like, that's it. You got to hope the tape isn't burned through. You might get a shit copy. So it's a bummer, man. Like, they've got to do more to preserve this stuff. But that's kind of me on my soapbox about preservation. And like I said, I'm in the modern era, I'm very much digital convenience. So if that's the preservation, if they begin to make these games available digitally, I'm happy with that, quite honestly. As long as they're proliferated and the access is fairly easy. I don't think they need to be free. Like, I'd be fine if they were, something you could buy or rent or whatever. But if the publishers and these IP holders are going to refuse, I do think there should be support for this library plan of allowing these things to be sort of rented and available. Otherwise you're just going to grow emulation, because you're going to grow resentment as people want to, reconnect either with their past or experience classics that they either weren't around for, because, they were born in 2000s or whatever, right? But they got to do something. 13% of classic games being available is a bullshit number. And it's embarrassing to be, a fan of an industry that is just leaving behind its own legacy. Like, there's no preservation of the history of games. That's a super, super bummer. And I had a video that came out this week talking about the ID at Xbox Showcase. They finished it off with a look at Karateka, which is not a game I'd ever played before. It wasn't really aware of it. But it was billed as like, before Prince of Persia, there was this. And, they had this deep dive into the game, like a slight remaster, like different versions you could play, sort of a documentary on the making of it. It was really cool. In the clip, they showed like how the developer had his father help him like write the music. And it was a really cool way to see it. That's coming to like Xbox and PC, I believe. And I'd love to see more stuff like that. I'd love to see that kind of stuff encouraged. Even though the numbers are going to be small, right? They're definitely going to make more money by selling you a brand new game, because that's what most people are into. But we've got to have respect for the history of the medium and the people who are diehard into that kind of stuff. Even though it's a smaller market, companies need to be encouraged, and I think in some cases kind of prodded into doing the right thing and preserving the legacy of game making. All right, so let's get into the final big story. Let me pull out of here real fast. Let's go back to that's better. Ooh. So, Microsoft cleared to buy Activision in US as UK pauses fight. So, big story of the week. Maybe big story of the month, man. Microsoft won the preliminary injunction trial. Calm down, it's not over yet. But the FTC, Federal Trade Commission here in the United States, was seeking a preliminary injunction. They wanted to block the deal. They are suing to block the deal. They asked a judge to give them a preliminary injunction, which basically means don't let them buy Activision. Don't let them consummate the acquisition until we've had a chance to, do the full FTC review process. Here's why that's a killer. The FTC review process is multi-year. Like it generally would take them a couple years. They could tie Microsoft up for 2-3 years at the minimum, maybe a full year while they go through this. So usually if they get a PI, the deal's dead. Now, the US hasn't granted a preliminary injunction on a vertical merger in like 40 years. It's very uncommon because vertical mergers, which is what this is generally seen as a positive for consumers, right? Essentially, a distributor of goods is buying a manufacturer of goods, which means the pipeline gets shorter. So which means usually that cost is passed on to consumers, right? So generally that's how it's seen. And what do you know? The judge, Jacqueline Scott Corley, out of the Northern District of California, did not grant the FTC the preliminary injunction. Now, she had initially put in place a temporary restraining order that was going to last through Friday, or through Monday, since she didn't put out her decision until Tuesday, which would have made it really hard because Microsoft has to close this deal with Activision by the 18th. In her denial of the PI, she put that into business day Friday, the restraining order's up. They can close the deal. So a lot of people are speculating that Microsoft might try to close either on Saturday or Monday. Like we've seen rumors that the NASDAQ is preparing to remove Activision from the NASDAQ 100 and find a suitable replacement. So there's a lot of big moves. Now, the FTC has filed an appeal. They are appealing that. They're going to take it to the Ninth Circuit Court, which will be a 3-judge panel where they will decide if the Northern District of California got it wrong. From my understanding, and I'm obviously not a lawyer, though I did play one on TV. It looks unlikely. I'm not seeing a lot of people who have confidence that the FTC will be able to pull this off. But they are trying. And I've said before on this show, the FTC has been pretty open in the past about the current administration over there under Chair Khan. And you can agree with this or not agree with this, right? Because this is political. It really has nothing to do with gaming. But their motive seems to be taking any case against a big merger. They're throwing out all the stops. They are trying to stop it. They're suing at every corner. They're doing every appeal. They're making it difficult for big companies to spend big money. And it's I think the hope is that it will have a freezing effect on other companies, right? If you're a big company, you're thinking about an acquisition that's maybe a little risky, and you're watching Microsoft go through all of this over a deal that most analysts thought was going to be pretty smooth sailing. It might put a little ice in your veins, right? It might cool your jets on making a purchase. And I think that's really their goal, is to kind of have a freezing effect across all mergers and acquisitions, And so I don't think the specifics of the case really matter. I think that's one of the reasons you've seen a lot of analysts kind of shocked and surprised by how poorly the FTC laid out an argument against this deal. So I think there's 2 reasons for that. One, I think that the FTC doesn't care if they win or lose. They just want to fight. They just want to make it difficult. They'd love to win, obviously. They'd love to win. But they really just want to make it hard and show all the other companies how hard it's going to be, right? The second reason is I don't think there's a good legal reason for blocking this deal. I understand some people don't like the idea of a company as big as Microsoft buying, Activision. But I have not heard a good legal argument why they shouldn't be able to purchase this company. I don't understand how it could possibly be a monopoly when you think about how many other big studios and how many games are out there. I've never heard a good argument. If you've got a great argument, I'd love to, toss it in the chat or in the comments. If you're watching this on VOD, I'll try to respond. But yeah, I've not heard a good legal argument. I understand why people are kind of in their feelings about it and just don't like the idea of consolidation. But, you know, there's a difference between not liking the moves that are being made and the moves being illegal. And so I think that's what we're seeing here with this. So look, it's not over yet, right? I've been saying too that it is political. We don't know how things are going to get ruled on now. But it's looking more and more likely that the FTC will probably lose this appeal. I mean, it's down to the wire. Most likely we can expect to know by tomorrow evening what the Ninth Circuit is going to do as far as granting the appeal or not. And then probably pretty likely Microsoft closes very quickly. When it was first announced that the FTC had lost the case for the preliminary injunction, the UK and Microsoft both put out statements, or the UK CMA and Microsoft both put out statements saying they were agreeing to halt the judicial process in England right now over this deal to try to maybe work something out and kind of renegotiate. CNBC had leaked that maybe there was talks of a small divestiture, most likely related to cloud, obviously, because cloud was the complaint that the UK CMA had, and that they're probably going to come to an agreement. Now, after CNBC leaked that, the CMA was quick to come out and say like, whoa, no. We don't have any deals yet. We want to look. The FTC won't let me be me. I love it. Oh, okay. That's a great comment. You made me laugh too hard. I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. So, look, they were quick to kind of shut that down, right? I think more than likely what happened was it got leaked out to CNBC that they were discussing this. CMA probably didn't like that look, right? Oh, like we're going to agree right away. So they wanted to come out and say, hey, we haven't agreed on anything yet. I mean, it's possible Microsoft got tricked, but I'm pretty sure the lawyers over there wouldn't agree to pause the judicial review if they thought there was any chance of that messing up their ability to close. So most likely we will see this close, which to me can't come soon enough. I'm ready for this to be over. Like, honestly, at this point, as I've said before, I think video games are going to be just fine whether or not this deal goes through. But I'd love it to be over, and we all know one way or the other what's going to happen, if only for the point that the more interesting conversation is what happens next. Whether they lose or win this, the more interesting conversation is, well, okay, they have ABK. What do they do with it? How does gaming start to change? What new games are coming out? How does PlayStation react? How does Nintendo react? That's the more interesting conversation. And then likewise, if they don't, if for some reason, if somehow the FTC gets this PI and the deal falls through and Activision wants to back out and just collect that that cool $3 billion cash, that's interesting too in a way, because like, how does Xbox respond? Xbox is now sitting on all this capital. They have all this cash that was locked up in the deal. Yeah, they throw out $3 billion to basically burn in a fire out of that $69 billion. That still leaves them $66 billion. Now, a company as big as Microsoft, there's probably a lot of department heads in cloud and in enterprise and other locations that probably would like a piece of that. So there will be some arguments about how that money gets spent. But I think you could see a very interesting game where a very aggressive Microsoft on exclusives, on third-party deals, on second-party deals. And then looking at other acquisitions, I do think they're going to stay focused on mobile. But I think it's an interesting world no matter which way it goes. But I am ready for it to be over. It has just gone on and on and on. But it's coming. We're in the end game now. We should know by, if not Friday, then we should know by early next week how this is all going to shake out in the end. And then, you know what I read that it was kind of a bummer was because of all the contracts and all the marketing stuff, we're not going to see a Call of Duty game on Game Pass until 2025. I think it'll be like January 25, but still, that's a long time to wait after this is all over with. But it looks like they've got to respect the different contracts they have with PlayStation and others, or I think mainly just PlayStation. But yeah, I think that's kind of a wrap. We kind of got through everything. A little bit. I think it's a decent time. We usually hit somewhere between 35 minutes to an hour, unless Papa hops onto a game, which I'm not doing tonight, unfortunately, because and I'm kind of saved this for last, though, what I've been playing. It's mainly Final Fantasy 16. I have been doing a lot of Call of Duty on the new Vondel. Really liking it with the squad. But beyond that, it's Final Fantasy 16, and I'm deep in the in-game now. So I didn't want to toss that on stream and have a whole streamer. It was all spoiler, so anyone who clicks on it is like seeing like, you know, the final, you know, whatever few hours of Final Fantasy 16. So also I'd like to know about that, you know, how soon is too soon? You know, a lot of times when I do the news here, I'm playing a game and I'm within the first half of the game. So I don't feel too weird about having the game footage up alongside me as I'm doing the news. But when I'm grabbing footage that's so deep into the in-game of a game, especially one that's as story focused and long as Final Fantasy 16, I kind of wanted to avoid popping that up here. But I'd love to hear in the comments or whatever what you think on that. If that'd be something you want to see, or if you like my deference here in kind of, you know, deferring to like, well, I'm not going to risk spoiling anything for anybody. And I'll just try to stick to like new game footage, which will in turn mean sometimes there's no game footage, you know, when I'm playing long games and I'm getting near the end. Unless I start recording like my multiplayer stuff, because like you can't really spoil Call of Duty Warzone. You can't really spoil Rocket League or Deep Rock. You could maybe spoil Deep Rock Galactic, you know, if you hadn't seen specific stalagmites. Like, I hate when someone shows me a stalagmite I've never seen before. All right, well, that's stupidest thing I've ever said in my life. We're signing off. Appreciate you watching. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe. You clearly are enjoying the content, and I wouldn't want you to miss a second of it. But for anyone who, well, I guess there wouldn't be anyone else I'm talking to, because if you made it this far, you made it this far. Oh, geez, I gotta go to bed.